Hi, everyone. I'm Nita Raghawansi, President of MMF-US. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Expert Encounters series, and this is number 3, License to Sync. I'll just tell you a little bit about MMF-US if you haven't heard the spiel already, and then we'll get started with our programming, and I'll introduce you to our fabulous moderator. MMF-US, Music Managers Forum US, is the 27-year-old trade association for music managers and self-managed artists. We definitely like to focus on gathering our community, providing education, and providing advocacy, as well as connection points for everyone. And we are part of a larger network called the International Music Managers Forum, which is an umbrella organization that consists of 50 plus MMFs from all around the world. There are actually MMFs in India and MMFs in Australia, MMFs in all sorts of fun countries. So if ever you would like to connect through to the global network, I always invite everyone to email me or email info@mmfus.com. I'm Nita, N-E-E-T-A, at mmfus.com. Happy to answer any questions you have. And also want to let you know we are an all-volunteer organization. We work off of the wonderful, amazing hours of volunteer contribution by the various folks involved, including our board members. And we pay our operating costs through our dues and through sponsorship dollars. And so we do encourage you to join. It's $75 a year. You can go to mmfus.com and find out all about membership. And one of the great perks is that you get a free subscription to Music Ally, which is normally, I think, a $500 or $600 annual fee. And it's an amazing publication if you don't know about it. So please do think about actually joining MMF-US. I see a lot of return attendees, and I'm really excited that you're here. And so I'd love for you to actually become members of our community. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our amazing moderator. He is the curator and moderator of our panel today, and a founding member of MMF-US and on our advisory board, the fabulous Stephen Scharf, who has been in publishing for how many years, Steve? Have you been in publishing?
Well, I've been in licensing music and publishing for like close to 30 years.
Wow, a long time. So I'm glad we have your knowledge and breadth of experience here to moderate our fabulous panel. And so I'll let you all get started. Actually, real quick, Wesley, do you have any instructions for our audience on how to use GoToWebinar? Oh, you're on mute, I think.
Yes. So hi, everyone. Really quickly. Am I still on mute?
No, you're good.
Okay. If it's your first time using GoToWebinar, basically there are 2 sections of the platform that you need to know about. One is the questions section of your control panel. If you have any questions for the panelists or about the subject, please write them in here. And then second is the chat section. So if you're having any problems or you want some help troubleshooting, I'll be sitting here in the background trying to make sure that everybody's experience is running smoothly. And just go ahead and in chat, type out your troubleshooting question and send it to organizers only, and then it'll go to me and I'll try to help you out. So that's it. Otherwise, if you have any problems or you have to leave, don't worry, the session's being recorded and we'll have it up on our YouTube channel edited as soon as we can. And yeah, I think that's it. So enjoy the session.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wesley, for that. And so Steve, take it away. And thanks you so
Nita
much.
And Wesley, appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I have moderated and or been on well over 150 panels over the years, but this is the first time I've ever done one like this, so virtually. So this is kind of an exciting moment, and I'm glad that we have such a great group of people that committed to do this, and I'll just give some brief introductions. Well, first and foremost, I have my own licensing company, Stephen Scharf Entertainment. I work with over 90 artists, also represent a vintage record label called Jamie Records, and I also manage film and TV composers and some record producers. So I'm very involved in the world of sync and licensing and scoring and all that day in and day out. And I was a publisher for many years at Carlin America as well. To my left well, which is this way, but this way, is Rochelle Holguin. Rochelle is Vice President, Creative Music Strategy and Licensing at Viacom CBS Network. And she oversees supervision for content creators across MTV, VH1, BET, Logo, CMT, Pop TV, the Paramount Network, lots and lots of content, shows, and music. Below her is Patricia Carrera. We also like to call her Patty CM. And Patty is in right now, Cuernavaca, Mexico. And she is the owner of Control Freaks, which is dedicated to helping creators manage their rights, do music licensing, supervision for movies, TV, and advertising. And she also works with all kinds of studios, from Netflix to Amazon, independent ones and Mexican ones and so forth. And she's been in royalty collection for over 18 years, which she does very well for a lot of her clients, which is a very important thing as well. Below me is Rick Clark. Rick is currently in Columbia, Tennessee, outside of Nashville. Rick is a fantastic music supervisor who's worked on shows like Oprah Winfrey's Greenleaf, AMC's Hell on Wheels, Hap and Leonard, which he was nominated for Best Music Supervision in a Television Drama at last year's Gilda Music Supervisor Awards. And currently, the soundtrack for Greenleaf won a 2020 Stellar Award, which is for the gospel area. I think Rick can expound upon that. He's worked with many, many projects, including films like Up in the Air, Big Stars, Nothing Can Hurt Me, and many other situations. Oh, here it is. Greenleaf just won the Stellar Gospel Music Award for soundtrack. That's what it was. And last but not least, Danny Exum. Danny is also in LA, along with Rochelle. And Danny is currently Director of Music for Workshop Creative, leading the music department, overseeing all creative music endeavors for the agency. And Danny pretty much works on trailers. That's his main focus. And he's worked on many, many projects, including Bombshell, Rocket Man, Toy Story 4, Good Boys, The Big Sick, Baywatch, Jumanji, Detroit, Kubo and the Two Strings, and many others. So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for giving your time for this. And we're gonna kick it off with, here we go. Now more than ever, we're trying to find even more ways to generate revenue for our artists' works. What do you suggest we do in terms of getting more placements these days? What should we try? Where should we look? And what have you been traditionally been looking at? And also in terms of what's happened certainly in the last number of months with COVID taking place. Rick, would you like to?
See, can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, I mean, I think right now with the COVID situation, there are a lot of productions that are just starting to ramp back up again. You know, for the last 6 months, it's been sort of wrapping up what you already had on your plate and waiting to see what would happen. Like there's a show I was tied to that was supposed to have started in June, and it got bumped till the first quarter next year, but I don't think it's that uncommon. But, you know, still, this is a good time to be, you know, building bridges and pitching, you know, the music. I just personally feel like, you know, if you've got something that you think is going to work for a production, it sounds maybe a little assholish, but just make sure that you don't waste people's time. Just, you know, make sure that when you're doing your research that if the person receiving the music says, I'm not feeling it or something, you don't oversell it. And make sure that it's something that you feel like the person receiving your music respects you as not a waste of time. mean, sounds sort of cold-blooded, but
No, it's true. I mean, one has to do their homework to know what kind of music that particular project that you're working on needs, and not just send anything from anywhere, you know. Rochelle, you're in a little bit of a different situation, overseeing so many shows and projects. How do you view doling out or finding the right supervisors to work on the different shows that you work on?
A lot of the brands that I focus on, so a lot of the music brands, like MTV, VH1, CMT, BET, obviously they have a specific audience. You know, obviously MTV being kind of youth focused, you know, VH1 being more focused on, you know, diverse communities. So we are, you know, trying really hard to make sure that we find supervisors that really represent the cultures we're trying to convey. Historically, you know, that's been an initiative of ours for a long time, but obviously with things happening, you know, in the recent years, it's really important for us. So, you know, making sure that we're sourcing diverse supervisors is important as an initiative, and it's something that I hope to do more in 2021. You know, a lot of the shows we have, again, as I mentioned, you know, super diverse, Love and Hip Hop, Black Ink Crew, shows on BET. Want to make sure that we're bringing people in that really understand and can speak to the culture and the music that we're placing. So, and I know in the scene community, this is a big initiative for a lot of us to make sure that we are sourcing diverse people to enter into the business. That's always tricky, just because of, you know, relationships, who you know. But I think, you know, we have a group of people heading up initiatives to make that happen. So yeah, it's a fight, but we're doing it, and it's really important to Viacom CBS.
Gotcha. Patty, would like to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, regarding the royalties, for most of my clients, the decline of royalty payments has been really, really amazing. Some of them have lost like 70% of their revenue. No shows, no royalties, and we all know how digital works. So some of them are trying to compensate with much more activity in digital platforms, but it's just not enough. So right now what I'm seeing is that there's a boom of people talking about synchronization, which didn't happen before, right? So everybody's trying to understand how to get their music there in those productions. And most of the times they think, oh, I just made like an awesome song, I just recorded it, it should be synced. And it's not that easy. It's not just like that. You have to register it, and you have to work on the metadata, and then you have to place it, and you have to talk to people and connect. And there's a lot of things to do. So I see that the community, like the artistic community, are really trying to understand how to do it. They are taking courses, they are gathering and talking about it, and joining groups that talk about it. I've been receiving calls like from people trying to connect with other music supervisors here in Mexico and Latin America. So we music supervisors are starting to connect and work together, which didn't happen as well. There was this idea of, this is my production, this is my catalog, these are my contacts. And that just doesn't work anymore. This is like a collaborative, you know, time, and we have to do it. And for everyone, artists are starting to collaborate with each other as well, and sharing contacts and all. So it's been really interesting, and this is part of what's been going on, like all these invitations to panels and webinars and to talk about it. So I think that it's really healthy that we are doing this, that artists are starting to ask themselves, okay, how am I going to make this profitable? If I want to pay rent, I want to make a living out of it. And it's just not, no one is going to discover me. You know, those times are over. Like, oh, I want a label to discover me and then that's it. It's not going to happen anymore. You have to work and you have to understand, and you have to understand the legal aspect and the administrative aspect of it all.
Mhm. Very
Do it
true.
as good as possible, because also urban music and Latin music, they are about collaborations, and some of the songs are done and written by 10 people, 8 people. How do you clear that for a movie or for a series? If
It
I
can be
see
very
this
difficult.
people represented by 7 different labels, or no, not labels, but publishers, I'm gonna go like, I don't know. You know what? No. So
Right.
yeah, understanding those kind of things are one of the most important things. And then connecting, just working on your network and
Uh,
build that tree of, relations.
Well, I'll just give a quick shout out to the Gilda Music Supervisors, which everybody here is a member of. And it's been around now about 10 years, and it's just a great organization. It really just embraces the community of all the people that do this kind of work, and other people like myself, is a friend of the guild, is a music licensor, and so forth, and many publishers as well, are very involved in it too. And it's just been a great thing to bring people together like that, as we have as managers with the Music Managers Forum for so many years. Is finally places where people can really connect and do that with. Danny, let's talk about trailers for a moment. That's
Let's do it.
yeah, it's a very specific and different area of work that you do. And
hmm
why don't we just explore a little bit about how you approach looking for the kind of music that you're looking for, be it a score with a composer or source music.
Well, we work on all kinds of different movies, so everything is different. I mean, and that's kind of a maybe not the best answer, but it's just every time that we're, maybe it's a comedy, maybe it's a romantic comedy, maybe it's a horror movie, maybe it's an animated. So I find myself looking for music, every kind of music. Today I was doing like Filipino pop songs, Filipino covers of pop songs, and then some hip hop, and it's just, so for me, and then the composer thing. I mean, we probably sweeten 98% of the things that we put out, so meaning like whether that's a full kind of orchestral overlay to kind of, make, for example, turn a cover song into some big trailer back end, or if it's just, adding some percussion and just some little things to make editorial easier, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's a little different than other music supervision. We're trying to get people, well, we were trying to get people in the theaters, but now we're kind of trying to figure, out this sort of new world. But, at the end of the day, we're still trying to get people to perk up and see this movie or this show or whatever it is. So it's this really interesting kind of nexus of art and commerce where we're trying to, obviously make something really creative, and at the same time making sure that we're hitting these signposts of the marketing and who we're trying to target in that sense. And obviously music plays a huge role in that part as well.
Right.
Mhm.
Every supervisor has their own particular way of finding music for their projects. Tell us how that process starts. And do you send out searches to your trusted music relationships, or do you just go and find what you need first?
I typically, I mean, again, it depends, but generally I kind of do my own research and kind of just look for things myself. And then if I'm finding that I have holes, or like today, again, going back to that sort of Filipino pop thing, like I don't have a lot of that. So that's the situation where I'm sort of reaching out to people for that kind of stuff. But I send out searches if things get you know, if I need to freshen things up. And it's always nice to get, you know, especially if we're up against the gun, a lot of times our timelines are very fast. People are wanting, because we have to turn spots around and send them back to the studios, and they have marketing meetings and stuff. So we're working on a pretty fast schedule. So, you know, when that happens, I definitely will send out searches there. I do like to do it on my own because a lot of times, you know, people are sending back, whether it's frontline stuff that they're trying to push, or things that maybe will work, or things that they might think will work. And you know, it was alluded to earlier, but it's like, you know, I just want the things that I want. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have the things that work for this. And I'm obviously love new music and listening to everything, but I find, you know, I can focus it a little bit more if I start just doing it myself and then fill things in afterwards with searches. That's just my thing. But, you know, I mean, there's a lot of time I sent out, you know, a search yesterday and today. And so it depends, but yeah.
Gotcha. Well, one thing I want to just bring up that most people may not realize, there are many, many trailer companies that do this kind of work. And don't you always seem to get pitched the same project, and then everybody's vying to win it, basically?
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, we definitely are in competition with other shops. I mean, you know, typically on any film, there's at least 2 shops working on something, and whether or not whether that's like we're doing 2 different sort of looks at the piece. You know, maybe we're doing like a young male and they're doing like a older female thing. It could be that, or we're both just trying to make the coolest thing possible to kind of try to win that account. You know what I mean? So, but we're always competing, and you know, there are times where you know, our cuts are working, but somebody else's music is working better, and so, you know, they'll take, you know, the studio will say use this music, and so there's a lot of that, like mixing and matching, especially on bigger projects, because at the end of the day, the studio is like just looking for pieces that work, and then, you know, put together like a full piece. But yeah, there's a lot of competition, and it's friendly competition, but it is competition nonetheless, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Rochelle, how do you view, you know, looking for music from, you know, doing either searches or is it through the supervisors you're hiring? And just tell us a little bit about your take on that.
Yeah, so I do a lot of we do a lot of supervision in-house as well. So if there's for some reason a budget that we can hire an external person, we'll do it in-house. So depending on the project, we do go to our trusted partners, labels, publishers, managers, even to kind of source music for a project. But in general, the way I kind of keep up and listen is that I do, you know, I follow a lot of, honestly, managers and A&R folks just on social media to kind of check out what they're listening to. I worked at UMPG for a bit, and getting to know the A&R team there was really helpful to me. Just the way that they source music, the way that they are connected, really kind of just amplified, you know, the way I think about sync. So I still kind of am passionate about that space. So I do follow a lot of A&R people to kind of just, you know, understand like what producers are following, you know, who's potentially going to hit next, and that helps inform me in terms of kind of the next big sound, because of the brands that I work with. They're very much fueled by pop culture. So a lot of the questions or the requests that I put out are, you know, our development execs are listening to Top 40 and they want to have, you know, the next, you know, weekend, who is that in a younger version. So staying on top of that is kind of key to how I work. But again, you know, following other managers and A&R reps really helps me do that.
Mm-hmm. Patty, in your sphere, are you reaching out to trusted music providers? You looking for it yourself? How do you approach that?
Well, you start doing like this, what I was talking about, a network, right? And then you have your favorite catalogs to work with, people that you know that get get what you want, and you send a brief and they just totally get it. And then they are legally available. And also talking about budgets. So we have a list. I have a team of amazing people, Alejandra and Jacobo, and the three of us, we have this list of catalogs that we love. And we have Spotify playlists, like tons of them, organized by catalog, but also by mood, by kind of scene, by words, by concepts, by like when everything seems to be going right, but it's going wrong, you know, those kind of concepts.
Right.
And also we like a lot to find new catalogs and artists, independent artists. We also want to work with the next big sound, of course, but we really like new sounds, like well-produced music. And I love vintage music as well, like old music, old catalogs. So yes, we do have our favorite and our list of catalogs, and then we send briefs. We prepare briefs and we try to make them as precise as possible so they understand what we're looking for. We have platforms so they can reach to us. Like we use Disco, for example, is a really cool platform. And yeah, we just send briefs when we don't get what we want. Just as Danny, we ask, right? Like, hey, who has this? And then amazing music starts pouring, and it's the fun that comes from listening to everything. And yeah, that's how we do it.
Great, great. Rick, you have a little bit of a different background because you also write and produce music and make music, as well as being a supervisor. So how does that interplay in how you look for new things and working with the people at large out there?
Generally speaking, I look for, let's say, certain shows. Showrunner or the producers might say, they might ask me specifically to create something for the show. You know, like on Hell on Wheels, I mean, I had to create everything from Irish music to writing songs in Cantonese for actresses to sing. And, you know, I mean, I just do whatever it is that I'm asked to do. And I have a pretty good network of several hundred really great musicians here in Nashville and Los Angeles and Canada and, you know what I'm saying, different places. So I do that, but at the end of the day, I'm always keeping my eyes open for stuff that other people are doing that I can put in. I'm not, even though I receive all of the latest music, I'm not the guy that you hire for those kind of shows. I can do it, you know, like on the Oprah Winfrey thing, I had to do, you know, modern hip hop and things like that. But there are so many people who live and breathe that. And I mean, I'm happy to do it. But if you want someone who's wanting something more organic, whether it's jazz or blues or country or regionalism or you know, Tejano music or whatever. Yeah, I worked as a producer on the Los Super 7 project with the Los Lobos and Calexico guys and Freddie Fender and all of that. So, you know, if you're wanting stuff like that, that's my wheelhouse. And I think I do a pretty good job of it. I mean, that's where I live. But I have a tremendous respect for people who understand the language and live and breathe it for the more current music. It's just, you know, it's not what I do. That said, you know, there's a lot of Americana out there. There's a lot of great jazz, a lot of great blues. Um, and, you know, I stay on top of that. And, you know, like Rochelle and Patty and Danny said, you still have your network.
Mm-hmm.
And your network is invaluable. And, you know, it is a friendly thing. You know, years ago, I remember meeting some music supervisors who were real territorial about their secret tracks, and I go, screw that. You know, there's so much music out there. You know, give me a break. So, is that helpful?
Yeah, very, very. Well, again, we have four unique individuals here who have their own view, their own way of working, and their own taste. And you're all who you are, and you're not the same person. And that's really important. Everybody has a different approach to these things. I mean, it's so important for someone like myself who sends music out to people to give them what they want, not what I think they should hear. I work with all kinds of genres, and it's so important to nail it on the head with what they're using for a specific project. And the better a search brief is written, helps people like me and all the other people who license music out there. Otherwise, it can be very daunting to try to figure out what they're actually asking for, you know.
I mean,
And
one thing I can add, if that's okay, is
Mhm.
that you know, I really, really believe that the essence of humanity, joy, sorrow, longing, rage, and all of that, you find that in the good music. And if you're listening with your soul, as opposed to what's the flavor, you're going to find reality in terms of the human condition. And that's what you want to do. You're trying to take something musically and give it to a production in a way that makes it emotionally nonlinear, because it's in the nonlinearity that creates those moments that you fall into and you're going, well, the boy played with this frog and you're crying and you're going, why in the hell am I crying? Because the boy's playing with a frog. It's because you picked the right thing that hit the nonlinear moment of human existence. And so I don't mean to rattle on here, but I'm just saying that it's, you know, it's, you just have to listen with your heart. And, you know, the really good stuff does rise, I think.
Absolutely.
So
That's
I'll
great.
get off my little box.
That's cool. Uh, a word that's come up from everybody pretty much so far is showrunner. And it's funny because we as insiders who've been pitching music for years know and understand what that is. But I've actually seen over maybe the last year or two that it's something that's come more to the front and it's being talked about more and so forth. So in terms of the showrunners that you all work with, and Danny, I'm not sure if you're dealing with a specific showrunner or just the actual producers of the trailers that you're working with, but in terms of showrunners, um, how do you navigate that relationship when you're working on a project?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's, I mean, we don't generally work with a showrunner. I mean, sometimes we do. You know, and if it's a film, sometimes the filmmaker, depending on who they are, has some input. And same with, you know, a TV show or something. But generally, we're dealing with the marketing department at a studio, and you know, it's a really collaborative process. I mean, everybody has an opinion, and you know, our spots are sent over every day or every 2 days. They have a all hands marketing meeting at the studio, and they're showing spots and they're showing trailers, and you know, basically tearing them apart, and then we put them back together in a way that you know, incorporates those notes. But we, you know, everybody has, my job is to provide options, you know what I mean? Like, I know I obviously have my thoughts of like, this is the song, you know. And over the years I've learned more and more about not taking that kind of thing so personally when that song is, you know, that song is not chosen, and it's just bigger than me. And you know, speaking to something Rick said earlier, I try as a music supervisor to sort of get rid of my ego and not be secretive and not be like, it's like we're all sort of in this thing together. And obviously as a bigger music supervision community, and then with my day-to-day work, it's just all about how can I be the best teammate possible and get this thing over the finish line, you know. So there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of times when the song that we have is, you know, we're thrown out and start again, and that's what we do, you know.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Patty, your experiences working with various showrunners on projects.
Well, even I was thinking about even with the editors. It's not only I have to feed the editor and the director and the producer with lots of options, and then they give me options out of their own background. And this is about connecting all those dots, because it's a project made by everyone. It's obviously the vision of the screenwriter of the yeah, that's how you say it, no, the script.
Mm-hmm.
And then the director, and then the editor, and everyone has an idea. So I think our job also is to make sense of all of those ideas, to make a complete concept that sparks what Rick was talking about, the emotion in someone that is seeing and listening. So yeah, I work a lot, yes, with showrunners, but with everyone involved. And then I try to listen to what they want. Sometimes the editor just plays music that he found, and he just feels that that is the thing. And the director falls in love with the song. And then my job is to, okay, so let's make this happen. And how does it fit with the rest of the selections, you know, and with the score and everything. So yeah, that's how we try to do what Danny says, of being open, and you have to be with an open heart and open mind
Mm-hmm.
to everyone involved, and to make the project of a family, you know. And you become family in a way. You work for months with these people, and you talk almost every day with them. So yeah, that's interesting as well.
Cool. Rochelle, sitting where you're sitting, overseeing all these networks and shows, what's your experience with dealing with the showrunners and the producers on these projects?
I think it's the same as Patty and Danny. There, you know, there's a collective of people that, you know, make decisions. And from my side, you know, it's making sure that the showrunners and our network executives are happy. I will say, you know, music supervision, I think it's the one thing in entertainment where everyone has an opinion, right? So it's not like I would ever give an opinion on a script, like, hey, you should have wrote that differently. But with music, you know, everyone from the PA is like, you know, I have this dope track and it would work so much better there. So it's kind of managing all those pieces. You know, for us, again, it's making sure that we're building the trust with the showrunner, but also we are serving the network's, you know, greater vision. So it gets tricky sometimes because sometimes those don't align, and it's our job to kind of navigate that and make sure we're kind of hitting all those pieces. And I did want to add to Patty's note about the editors. That's a really hard one for us too, because, you know, they are kind of in control of the project, at least on the show that I work on. So they're going to put in their songs that, you know, they love, that they're used to working with. So we have to do that dance, then the dance with the showrunner, and the dance with the network execs. So a lot of pieces, it's a lot of politics. It's not just, you know, the music, you know, giving them the music, it's navigating personalities and making sure everyone knows you're on their team. You just want to get the best piece of music possible. So yeah, it's a little exhausting at times, but the end result is good and satisfying, per your note, Rick, about the emotion that gets evoked. Like when you get those goosebumps from something you place, like that's the best feeling.
Gotcha. Rick, did you have something? Sure.
Yeah, everyone made some really great points there. The thing about music editors, when I come onto a project, you know, at the very beginning, I make sure that I'm getting the very first scripts and the season Bible. If I'm working on a show, before everything is and if you don't know what seasoned Bible means, it's a terminology. Basically, it's maybe 5 or 10 pages that are synopsises, summaries of what each episode is supposed to do as it builds towards a culmination in the last episode. The music editor is, Rochelle, you sort of hit the nail on the head. I mean, they sort of, they stick their stuff in there. And so what I try to do is when I get the music on the front end, and usually it's the music, it's the showrunner who hires me. I usually get brought over from show to show to show from people who've worked with me before, thank God. So it's sort of like, this language that we've already developed. So I will usually have those discussions on the very front end, at which point, when the music editor has been hired, and if I have a hand in hiring the music editor, which has happened a couple of times, then it's sort of understood that, look, right here you needed some source, or you needed this or that. Do me a favor, send me a quick time of the scene with some handles on it, and let me do the music. And then I just get to work, and I will send them anywhere from 1 to maybe 3 or 4 options, and I will dump it, into Final Cut. I'll lay the levels, I'll play with the audio on the dialogue and everything to give them an idea exactly how I envision it. So I have my best argument forward. At that point, most all of the time, music editors will go, well, you saved me some work. And then I have the alternate versions. So when we have a spotting session, and the showrunner is there, and the director, and everyone else, and the showrunner says, hey, Rick, I'm not feeling it. I didn't want the polka there. I wanted the disco song. I can say, well, here's a disco song, and I'm ready. I've got everything backed up. But the other thing too is I try really hard to make sure that I usually don't give more than 3 options. Because the problem is when you give people options, it's like you're opening Pandora's box. The more I can say, it's this one damn song. And if I really do it right, then I've saved everyone time, and I don't have the guy who's bringing the coffee to everyone saying, I love that Osmond Brothers song, and it really belonged in that scene where they're having a battle. It's just, you just don't want that. So, and the thing with showrunners too, I mean, there's sort of a saying I was told years ago, you got to know who God is, because God is the guy who fires you. And so as long as you know who God is in a production, that's who you massage. Because sometimes there's showrunners I've worked with who, there's a producer over here that's sort of feeding him something. And you start realizing, well, okay, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. I've got to make sure I master this language a little better. So this is something all you guys here in this panel know. God can make it really hard sometimes.
Definitely.
That's great. Well, I think that as everyone just expounded upon, you can see this isn't just about understanding music and how to place the music, but you've got to be psychologically involved with dealing with all these different kinds of personalities. I find it mind-blowing how many producers are on a show, on a TV show, even a film, but more so on TV. And they all have an opinion, I'm sure, and it's just got to be daunting to cut through all that red tape to get what you want to get. I've actually had situations where post-production editors found pieces of music and then brought it to the supervisor and said, we're going to use this, clear it. And then they don't even know where it came from. And that's really a problem.
Like when they want Stairway to Heaven.
Right.
They rip it off YouTube or something, and you're like, okay.
Right.
What do I do with that?
It can get pretty crazy. Okay, so moving on. How receptive are you in accepting music from an unknown artist as opposed to a trusted source as an independent licensing company, music publisher, record label? What's the best way of letting everyone in our audience know this? What's this?
I mean, obviously, I prefer getting music from a trusted source. It just makes my life easier. Now, there have been times where somebody just cold emails me or something, or cold calls me, and I'm like, oh, cool. And I listen to it, and it's great, and I file it away, like I'm sure everybody does. We have little playlists, and like this goes here for later, you know. Generally, I mean, I get so many emails every day from people that I already have relationships with, and I love getting new relationships. I do think it's easier if people are, you know, wondering whether should I just send this or should I put it through a third party or something like that. Like, I kind of always recommend going through a third party with it, or something like that, because they have a relationship with us. We trust that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And, you know, obviously the creative is very important, but the administrative is maybe more important, because if we can't clear it, if there's one writer that has 2% and nobody can find them, I mean, it's just a huge headache. So those trusted sources are trusted for a reason, you know. But again, that's not to say that you know, I will say that any email I get, like, my coordinator downloads it and puts it in a folder for me, and so I will get to it eventually. But it kind of goes in the back behind the things that I already trust, honestly.
Gotcha. Absolutely. I mean, it is so important to everybody out there watching this, that you can clear a piece of music without any headaches, especially music that has samples in it. You want it to be sample free, or I mean that can be crazy. I mean, with hip hop, I represent, you know, quite a bit of hip hop, and it's all sample free music, but it's educating those artists in the beginning.
Music to my ears, man.
Oh yeah, when I first started working with a couple of them that I still work with to this day, they didn't understand that. And we, you know, and you send a piece of music out and people know it's got a big sample. Oh my God, it's a train wreck. And you don't want that.
No.
It's, from my standpoint as a music licensor, I do my due diligence when I'm signing somebody to make sure that all the music is sample free, but that all the ducks in a row with the publishing, that all the writers have been signed off on, everybody that's involved in it. So when I send a piece of music out to any of these people, they know it's going to be okay. Because the last thing you want to have is they want it so badly and then they can't have it because there's a problem with it. So, Patty, want to chime in a little bit about the on who you like to reach out to, how to let new people in?
No, I like a lot, like, new music and new artists. It's also really nice when someone else gets, you know, gets the job of having every piece put together, right? And every time someone tells me one-stop shop, I'm like, woohoo! Yeah, that's the best. And there are so many companies right now that they're doing the job of organizing. So yeah, I like a lot new music and independent artists. Just if you are, make sure that you have every single piece of the authorship and the master side on your hand. If you don't have an agreement with everyone involved, then don't pitch it. Don't say you have this song, because it's going to be a headache for us. And then sometimes they tell you, no, yes, of course, I have everything. Those are my friends. And then 1 week before sending the, you know, the product, they tell, oh no, but he wants to sign his own license. And that's like, so,
Right.
yeah. So just if you're gonna send music like that, just make sure you have every single piece in your hand. Otherwise, don't do it. Because for us, is I'm never gonna do anything with this person or this label ever again, because I will never be sure.
Right.
I will never trust.
And that's how you lose a relationship. I mean, it takes years to develop relationships with people. and it's important. I mean, everything that I do is exclusive. So the piece of music that I'm sending, nobody else has, as an independent one-stop type of music. So I can sign off on it, and it's no issue to give it to a supervisor. But when of course, when you're working with big hit songs, and I did that for many years at Carlin, sending out AC/DC or James Brown or Lone Swivel Turtles, whoever it was. I mean, and in certain cases, those songs can have many writers and other co-publishers on them. And man, it's like, I remember we used to.
Some artists just died and they have inherited their rights and they can't find the son or the grandson or something, and then it's a problem,
Yeah, we used to deal. I used to deal with the estates of Bobby Darin and Billie Holiday, and so many different people like that left the planet, and you have to like make sure that you can continue to clear. I remember we represented a lot of Yes's music, and each one of those writers and musicians in that band owned a piece of the music, and there were 5 different publishers on some of these songs. And they're huge songs, and they can be such a headache to get everybody to agree to the same terms, Rochelle, in your world of overseeing all of these shows and projects, how is it for you in terms of, trying to gather, people who have new music to come into the door?
I mean, I think, going through a third party again is my preference as well. There are occasionally times where, I can reply to a cold email. I try to, if I can, like Danny, download the music. In an ideal world, I would get to that music within, 3 months or something, but sometimes it's just so hard because the amount of music that gets sent to us is, it's tricky. So again, having that third party rep or, someone you trust or someone that is trusted in the C community is probably the fastest way to get to me. I do have, younger team members who have more time on their hands too to kind of go through music. So I try to, if I get a bunch of music, send it to them as well so they can kind of sort and go through it. But, as the years have passed, I was just thinking this morning that I've been in this business for 20 years. I've kind of lost control of my inbox at this point. It's just kind of like deal with things as they come and go out for what I need.
Yeah.
That's just being honest.
It's like a perfect search thing now. I'm like, when was that thing? That was like 2 years ago, and I just searched for it, and it's there. It's perfect. This inbox zero thing it's not for me. It's not for me.
Oh God, don't even get me started on that. I mean, it's like this morning, I had 3 emails from someone saying, well, didn't you get my music? Didn't you get my music? That kind of thing. And you're going, I swear I haven't seen it. So I literally went through, all the little folders. And then I got down to the bottom one which said trash. Okay. And in the trash folder this morning, I discovered like 30 emails that I was going, these were people who said they sent me something. Even from my wife. It was like, I was going, I just can't believe this. But, I pay a service for this. But there you go. It's a wonderful damn world.
I've never heard of an email program that does A&R, and if they don't like the song, they throw it in the trash. That's interesting.
Yeah.
The
way of the future.
Don't expect an answer, don't expect an answer. And it's not because we're bad people or because we don't care or because it's just because we get 1,000 emails every day. We're not gonna.
That's a good point.
So yeah.
No, you have to be patient with people. You really do. I mean, I get inundated every day with people who want me to represent them, whether it's a composer or a new artist to take on from all over the world. And I eventually get into listening to stuff and then figure it out. If it's something that's really right, then I'll go, yeah, and then we'll reach out and talk about it. But it's overwhelming because we're trying to do our regular work and maintain all the clients we work with and so forth. So. Yeah,
one thing that Patty said, which I thought was really good, and I guess Rochelle mentioned it too, but it was the statement about so many writers on a composition. This sounds cold-blooded, but it's like if there's more than like 3 writers, and especially if there's more than a couple of publishers, I just don't even bother. It's just, I just won't even go down that road. And the one-stop thing is really important. And now we're living in an age where independent artists and independent labels, they pretty much dominate in a lot of ways. It's not that hard to find quality music, well-produced quality music that is a one-stop. And in fact, if there's someone that I feel has the tools, on some shows, I'll call up someone, I might, say, Patty, I know that you're really good at this kind of ragtime music. Why don't you knock out a ragtime song for me? And what I'll do is I'll just say, I'll tell you what, you give me this, if I get it in there, I'm going to license this to you as if you own the master and the publishing, even though a lot of people might say, well, it's work for hire. I don't even do that. I make sure that you get as much money as you possibly can. If I'm going to spend $500 or $1,000 for a quick cue from someone, I would rather, instead of it being licensed as work for hire, split it 50-50 master pub and make sure that you get the benefit of everything, because it's hard enough to make a living as a creative, without trying to be a jerk about it and saying it's work for hire. I don't know. That's just, so there, that's that.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Agree, I'm your fan.
absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about soundtracks. What's the process you've encountered in executive producing a soundtrack album for a film or television show? Rochelle, why don't we start with you?
We did, the last one I did, I think, was for a scripted show called Scream. And, it was obviously, a fun project to put together. But again, I think for me, I'm scarred from the politics of that process as well, because it's, again, managing the showrunner's expectations on the music versus, the label partner we went with and their expectations of getting their music in the show and on the soundtrack as well. So, there's a dance we have to do there. We ended up with a great soundtrack. It was a really great marketing tool for us to use to drive tune in to the show. But that's tricky. And then, today the soundtrack space is, for us, it's hard. It's, we don't have the big sellers anymore, at least on the brands that I work on. A lot of the stuff we do, if we're going to do some kind of release, it's, obviously digital only. We rarely do, vinyl release or CD. It just depends on the project. I think our goal is to put out more soundtracks, but the time and effort sometimes eclipse the idea, which I know sounds sad, but it has to be a really special project for us to put something out.
Gotcha. Patty, your
You should
experience.
just put things out on cassette tape only. Only cassette tape. Cassette tape soundtrack.
Fun.
We don't, that's not something I deal with too much. I like to use a lot of soundtracks.
Absolutely. Patty, in your case?
Yeah, for us, it's almost the same as Rochelle. They are all digital releases. So for us, the best thing to do is just to make a compilation of the songs that have already been released. You just work in a nice artwork for the movie and add songs that haven't been released previously, and you just focus on those licenses for the soundtrack and pieces of the score that might be, emblematic for the song, for the movie. And that's about it. This is a promotional tool. This is it doesn't have to do with making money with the soundtrack at all. It has to do with making it viral, with having people to listen to it and then being hooked and watching the series or the movie after that. But it's more like a marketing tool than any other thing, really.
Right. And Rick, you just had an experience with your soundtrack from Greenleaf. Talk about that.
It was very interesting in that, like I think everyone has said, you have these productions where there are people who everyone has an opinion, and there's a zillion producers, and Greenleaf was was a black gospel, two corrupt black gospel mega churches kind of thing. And what is one person's idea of black gospel and another person's can diverge wildly. I had some people who were bugging me to want to have more old school. I had a lot of people that were sending me stuff that was so auto-tuned. At one point, I told a producer I didn't know Jesus died for robots. It just sounded horrible, but it was like, I had one situation, which I think is the thing that actually put the soundtrack over the top, was one of the Winans. I helped produce a duet with Patti LaBelle in Atlanta. But that was a classic case where there were a lot of people in the background doing end runs. And then one day I sort of had it land in my lap, like he said, she said, and before you knew it, I've got to fix this problem. and literally, I had like 24 hours to get Patti together with this artist to help put the band together, to do everything. I'm in Nashville, they're in Atlanta, and Patti's got to fly in, and it was, and then I had one of the artists decide, after she had already signed off on something, decided she wanted to go shopping that day and wanted us to wait a few hours. And I literally sort of put my head on the chopping block and texted her and said, in so many words, you don't have the luxury of doing this. You have no idea how much we have jumped through hoops to make this happen, and she showed up 30 minutes early. But the thing was, it was a great session, and I was surprised that the thing won an award this week, because I honestly forgot about it. I sort of moved on to other productions. But I don't think people buy soundtracks anymore, really, and I don't think they have for years. I mean, I don't understand why you don't just put a Spotify list together and say, here you can listen to the songs and everyone cannot get paid.
Yeah. Well, certainly many supervisors do
I
put together Spotify.
Yeah, I actually prefer the artist to make their own release, and then I just compile it in a playlist of Spotify and work in a nice artwork, and that's it. But you do the job of uploading it. It's not a business anyway for anyone. So
It certainly was way back. I mean, I just have one quick story to share. When I was head of A&R for Private Stock Records, and this was 1977, long time ago, we had an artist on the label, Walter Murphy, who had that giant hit of Fifth of Beethoven, that disco Beethoven record. So one day I get a call from RSO Records, Robert Stigwood's label. And he said, we're doing a soundtrack album. He didn't call me, but somebody from the label called and said, we're doing a soundtrack to a movie with the Bee Gees. And we would really like to license Walter's song for the soundtrack. I said, great. Historically, everybody gets 1 point prorated per track on a soundtrack. At least it was back then. It usually is still now. And that soundtrack was Saturday Night Fever. We made over $1 million with 1 point on that track, because it was the biggest selling soundtrack of all time. I mean, it was incredible. Those are the days when things just sold through the roof. And it's too bad that doesn't happen anymore, but you just never know what it's going to be. And that was just a wild experience. All we did was have to make a deal, and money just kept pouring in, which was amazing. So I want to just bring it around to like one last question. What's the one project or placement that you've had that you're most proud of?
I'll go.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. The one that one of my favorites was I had placed the Icona song. Of course, now I'm spacing on the name of the song. I Love It. I think it's a big song. As the theme song to the Snooki and JWoww show, which is a spinoff of Jersey Shore. I'm super proud of that. It was the first time the song got synced ever. But what always gets me, it always reminds me of how amazing that was for me, is that I was eclipsed because it was placed next week in an episode of Girls, and then it kind of blew up after that. But my claim to fame is I placed that. That was the first person to place that song ever. So that's one of my most favorite.
Yeah, I've got a lot of strengths. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Patty?
It's like choosing your favorite son or daughter, you know, it's like, oh, I like all of them. But once I did, we needed this big band to perform live for a scene in a very traditional place in Mexico that is specifically for danzón. I don't know if you have heard of the genre, but so you go and dance this genre, danzón. And we couldn't find the right song. And then I talked to the director of the orchestra, and he was like, oh, but I have songs that we could use that haven't been released and we always played live, and there's not a recording of it. So would you like to listen to them? Okay. And we chose 3 songs. And then we went to this studio, Panorama Studios in Mexico City, and they recorded. They were like 20 musicians, and they arrived at 9 in the morning, and by 3, they had already recorded the 3 songs. They did only a couple of takes of each song because they were all amazing musicians from the symphonic, you know, the Mexican orchestra, the Philharmonic, amazing musicians. And we had these recordings, and then we took them to the film. How do you say it? To the salon to play live. So we filmed them, and the scene is amazing. And I was just in shock of seeing these awesome musicians doing that, and everyone at the studio, you know, the engineers, producers, everyone was like, what? They just record. It was perfect. So it was amazing, and the filming was awesome as well, and we had lots of fun. So that's my favorite, Cindy La Regia. If you are curious, you can see it.
Great. Danny, what's the particular song and trailer that you're really proud
of? My favorites are the ones that we have to sort of produce ourselves. So we did, I think, well, it's hard to choose, but I think this movie Kubo and the Two Strings, which is like a Leica stop motion animation films, a couple years ago, and we did 3 different orchestral versions of While My Guitar Gently Weeps. For like, we did one for the teaser that was just sort of like really sparse and windy, and you kind of like didn't even know that it was a song like up until the end, and then it kind of everything's swirling and then it comes together and you kind of, oh, you have this like aha moment, and then it's like logos. It's amazing. And then so from there we did another one that kind of just, you know, we put more and more into the song. And so as the trailers go on, there's 3 of them. The song goes from this sort of ethereal thing to this big orchestral version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and it was just like super fulfilling and
Cool.
really fun. Yeah.
Great. Rick, a favorite of yours?
That's sort of hard because there are a number that I really loved. Of just Source that I enjoyed, was happy to place. You know, we all have sort of artists that we, God, if I could help this artist kind of thing. Well, there's an old soul singer named Eddie Hinton, and I just love Eddie Hinton. And Steve, you know who I'm talking about. And when I worked with Cameron Crowe, helped him out on a movie called Elizabethtown, and I was with Cameron in Louisville and Memphis, and we were by a club in Memphis, and he says, "Rick, what should I have for this scene in Memphis?" And I said, "Eddie Hinton." And I managed to buffalo Eddie in there. And then in subsequent shows, I got Eddie into a few other things. When it happened, Leonard, I guess my greatest pleasure was on the final season of the show, we were looking for this thing that would be sort of Hap's theme and that would fit his character. And there's an Eddie Hinton recording. It was this old 45 called Dreamer. And he just, he's one of these soul singers like Otis Redding that you feel like he's like about to bleed out of his mouth. He's croaking so hard. and it just worked on this opening scene and where they're dancing together. He's dancing with this woman he has a crush on. And we engineered it because you had the season Bible to where it would be the final scene of the season too. So it was sort of this dramatic arc. And when it happens again, it's like this punch and you go, holy crap, it just feels so good, The other thing too is that on a more, like Danny was saying, when you're producing your own stuff, where there is a certain satisfaction to that. I did so much music for Hell on Wheels, and I did for Hap and Leonard and some for Greenleaf too. But on Hell on Wheels, it was like I said, from Cantonese stuff to my first cue that I created for him. I had to write a Mormon hymn, and we wrote a song called "Safe in the Hands of God," and the director, who was raised Mormon, told the showrunners, "That's a fine old Mormon hymn," and it and it was just, but it was one of those things. But my favorite moment was on that show was there was a scene when you're looking at dramatically in the arc dramatically, there are beats that you have to hit. And there's this one scene where Anson Mount, who was the star of the show, was picking up a woman who had this unrequited love for him. And he was bringing the body of a child in a casket that they were going to bury together. And this child was in the responsibility of this woman who loved him. And so, the end of the scene, the final scene, the door opens and there are these two women that have a history with each other. So I had to find a piece of music that hit the beats of the unrequited love, of the inconsolable depth of despair when the woman looks down at the casket after she gets into the wagon. And then also hits the beat of, these two women meet. So the friend of mine who I wrote the Mormon hymn with, she had an old song that she had written that was like this weird Appalachian thing. She's a playwright and she's so talented. And I said, why don't we if you could change a few words, what I would love for you to do is sing it a cappella. I'll give you the scene and, I'm going to produce you remotely as we're looking at the scene mutually. And so she performed the song a few times and just did it gorgeously. And she had this kind of pure voice that I felt represented the woman very well. And then I got my friend Grantley Phillips, who's a singer-songwriter, and I got Grant, and he and I and the woman, we laid down, and a guy named Jason Cipher, who's sort of T-Bone's string guy, and we sort of remotely created all the parts. And then what I had was that every time the beat happened, I had all of the music drop out. So during this key section, she would be singing a cappella as Anson walks over and offers his hand, and she looks up and it's just all you can hear is the air and her voice. and it's like breathtaking. And then the drone comes in softly, and there's tentative notes and slightly dissonant piano stuff pops in, and she gets up on the wagon and she looks down at the body, and it's silence again with just her voice.
Mm.
And then at the very end, it goes down to silence again when the two women meet. And I mean, that's been like maybe 4 years or so since then. And a week doesn't go by that I don't get emails and letters. And I mean, it's like, it's amazing. I mean, I had one woman reach out to me a few months ago. And this, I mean, it's hard for me to even share this. It's so heavy, but it's like she and her husband love this song so much that when he died of cancer, he asked her to sing the song to him as he died.
Wow.
And it's just like you go,
Beautiful, man.
you know, and you just, and that's what you want to do, because what we're doing is we're trying to do something, we're trying to touch the priceless. And we're trying to do it in a way that it almost happens in spite of us, you know? But there's, sorry.
That was amazing. Very beautiful. Very touching. Well, I think we're at the time where we can have some questions.
We have audience questions now. Yep. So the first and foremost question from the audience, primarily just coming from the position of managers and self-managed artists, is I'm sure that all of you in some capacity work with artist managers or management teams. Can we just go through the group really quickly, and like if a manager were to start working with you or your team, or if a management company would be starting working with you or your team in some capacity for syncs, what do you look for in a management team when you decide if you're going to work with them directly, if you're going to go primarily through their label or primarily through their publisher, etc.? Maybe let's start with Rochelle, because yeah.
So I think, you know, if we're going to management, again, having your the metadata, you know, and all those things kind of tied up nicely, where it's obviously your manager, so you're trying to push your artists and pitch your artists, and that's your priority. But having someone who can advise on your team, or you yourself are educated in, you know, the pieces that you need to have around a piece of music is key. Obviously, you know, for us, having the manager on board is kind of key in getting something approved. So that's always, you know, a positive thing. But again, I know that a lot of managers do pitch me directly, and a lot of times they just don't have the pieces together. So they're, you know, whoever their writer is, they're repping, or that, you know, their artists, they might not have everything tied up with who owns, you know, the entire composition. So make sure you understand that about your song.
Yeah, and I would say just to
Cool.
sort of
And Patty,
piggyback
what
on
about?
that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Danny.
I was just going to piggyback on that when Rochelle said having all the pieces together, and this might be something that's specific to what I do, but a lot of times we're always looking, everybody needs instrumentals, but we're also always looking for stems of songs. And because the reality is, if we can't get stems from your song, and a lot of times that, you know, we ask the label and then they ask the manager, and then, you know, there's this sort of chain, and sometimes I'll go straight to the manager. And, you know, understandably, there's pushback there sometimes. People want to protect those songs and things. But I will say, if we can't get that, it's just the song's not going to go anywhere, because we need to be able to like add things, and we're not going to like change your song and like do anything nefarious to it, but we need that sort of leeway to be able to cut things in, and maybe there's like a tambourine in there that the editor hates or the producer hates and we have to take it out. Or so having those things available on top of the metadata and the writing splits and all that stuff is so key, because even if it takes 2 days for us to get that and it's not ready, like there's a large possibility that song is going to get pulled. So
If I could ask a follow-up question to Wesley's here, I can see from the attendees list, we have a lot of managers who, come from larger management companies, pretty staffed up companies here. They're not indie managers, they're pretty sophisticated in terms of understanding, the sort of baseline of needing their metadata together. They have companies, and publishers and then what have you, business managers that help them through that as well. So I'm just going to go a little bit one step further in terms of, I'm sure you guys do have relationships with certain management companies. I'm just sort of wondering, for those that I can tell that there's, some that are sort of, let's call them medium-sized management companies that are sort of emerging into larger. And how can they sort of build that relationship? And do you, when you guys mentioned third party, that you work with third parties, would you consider the management company a third party that, once you build that relationship, that's considered that trusting source as well? Or how do you feel about
I would say so. I mean, I would say so. I definitely a trusted resource. I mean, I work with, and I'm sure everybody works with, a bunch of different managers. It's just it's a nice, I would consider that kind of third party. It's always nice to be able to go to the source. Hopefully you don't, sometimes it ruffles feathers at, at labels or publishers. But, I love going to managers and, it just makes my job a lot easier. So definitely would consider that a trusted source. Yeah.
as one of your, and how does somebody sort of, I mean, I guess it's the normal relationship thing, right? Like contact you, hey, I have this roster of 12 artists, or, and do the usual introduction, right? Like anybody else would. Okay. And
yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Danny.
I was just gonna say, I think that, it's, and nowadays it's sort of weird because it's like, I like to like have a hang and like go, not even talk about your artist. So like, let's go hang out and like have a drink or like see a show, or you know what I mean? Like, I find that really key to building relationships, and sort of now trying to figure out what that means in terms of building those really close relationships. But we'll figure it out.
Right. Well, so with certain, well, actually, Wes, are you going to ask the urban music question?
Well, I wasn't yet, but I was going to come to it. Would you like me to?
No, actually, hold off on it for a second. Actually, so in terms of independent, so some of the managers end up also having and starting their independent labels and being a one-stop shop solution for their artists, which is great from a clearance perspective if they're label publisher management. But still, I think they feel that they may need to use a platform to go through. Like, what platform do you all prefer to receive songs and information from? Is it just Disco or Dropbox? Are there?
Yeah, those are fine for me. I mean, Disco is obviously great, but it really any way that I can get the files, I don't really have that kind of preference personally.
Right.
Well, but for me, don't send files just in an email.
Right. Yeah, don't attach them to the email. That's a great point.
Never attach songs to an email. Just send a link where we can just play it, and if we like it, then an option to download an MP3 just to test it. And it's like the stages of listening to the music, but I don't want the WAV, or the WAV. How do you say it? Sorry, because Mexico. Yeah, no, we don't have the space to do it. And also, if you have your own company for a one-stop shop for your artist, is great. And if you don't, make sure you have a really clear relationship and communication with the label and the publisher, because sometimes they are really jealous. Like publishers and labels, sometimes they feel like you are skipping their, authority of, as the right holders. And it's not that. It's just that with the manager, you have more efficient communication to get what you need. It's not that you want to skip the label or the publisher. So make sure make sure to have that conversation with the labels and and publishers from your artists to make them understand it's okay. We're not skipping anyone. It's just a better way to communicate and get what we want.
Sure. Thank you. I'm going to ask this question for Rochelle. Rochelle, earlier, way early on in the webinar, you talked about diversity, and you said that you try to find diversity. And the question had come up about, how do you find diversity? Is it or should it be part of metadata? You have any thoughts there? Oh, I think you're on mute. Uh-oh. There you are. Do you hear? Can we hear you now? Yeah, there you are. Good.
Okay.
Go. Hi.
The metadata questions, that's interesting. I also oversee our production music library that Viacom owns, and we've been having a lot of conversations about metadata and how we're tagging. You know, we've actually removed the word urban from our music that we create as, you know, an initiative to change, you know, with the meaning around that. I don't know about that. I mean, that's something I think we have to kind of figure out as a community, if that makes sense. But in terms of sourcing, you know, artists, you know, that's just, we're going out and figuring out, you know, who's diverse, and supervisors, that's a little more tricky. Obviously, any people that want to work in entertainment and in the music side or supervision side, it starts kind of, we're trying to start like as early as like middle school or high schools, just to get people, you know, interested in this job. I don't know if that's the question that was asked, but you know.
Well, yeah, no, I think it is about sort of strategy, and is there sort of a diversity strategy around?
I think we're figuring it out. I really do. It's taking, you know, it's a lot of people kind of coming together and saying that we really need to take the time to sort this out. Because I think, you know, supervision in terms of entering the field, you know, a lot of times you have to work for free, or at least I did back in the day. I had an internship, you know, with a supervisor, and I did it for free. A lot of people don't have the means to do that. So it's like, how do we provide, you know, the resources for you know, younger people to kind of have an entryway. And at Viacom specifically, you know, our recruiter makes sure that, you know, if we have a position open, that we're sourcing from different, you know, colleges, or even, you know, different high school programs. Because another thing we're trying to work on is that, you know, you don't have to have a college education to do this job. And so I think, you know, that's really important for people to understand as well.
Thank you. Wesley, I'll let you take some of those questions on the queue.
Yeah, I'll hop in here. So basically, one of the other angles of that question is, so I manage a top 40 hip hop artist who has one of the biggest songs that was ever on TikTok. It's called Lottery, the Renegade Dance. It's on everything from like Ellen to Oprah to, you know, everywhere. There's over 35 million videos made with this song. And it's very funny because one of the first things that I was told as I started managing rappers was there's no such thing as procured sync for hip hop. And I think as we ourselves have tried to work more and more with sync, we've realized there's like a big divide, similarly to how, you know, Black artists getting on radio and white artists getting on radio. There's a similar kind of approach to culture and rap music in sync, and what people are and aren't allowed to say. And I'd love any input that all of you have on how that's changing. I mean, how it's changed in the last decade, how it's changed in the last 6 months, where you think it's going.
I'll answer that.
That's a hard one, so yeah.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. You know, I think because, you know, where I work is unique in that it's kind of, we do source, you know, hip hop that is authentic, quote unquote. We might have, you know, places for music, hip hop music that, you know, aren't traditional sync, or it's not, we're not looking for, you know, that big anthemic hip hop song. It's kind of, we do have a lot of programming that has like the underlying beats that make sense. I will say from our side, you know, there are a lot of non-Black people in production music making a lot of hip hop. So I feel like that's an area too where we can kind of work together to figure out how to change that. It's, you know, it's a tricky subject, and I think it's just kind of like with time, I do think it will change. For us, it is a priority to make a change, but you know, it's you know, it's entertainment in general. It's a lot of things that need to shift to make sure that, you know, the music is getting, you know, its proper look, or, you know, we're thinking about it in terms of when we do put a creative together as opposed to the opposite way. Like that's another way to get the music, you know, placed. If someone hears a song, they're going to build a project around it. I mean, obviously that's tricky and hard as well, but that's something that, you know, for our side, we try to kind of push out music that we love, hoping that someone kind of takes it and wants to build something around it. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's a good question.
That's a great, yeah, it's a great start of an answer. I don't think we need to go super deep in that. Nita, do you have any other questions that you'd like to go through from the audience?
Yes, let me unmute myself. Okay. Yeah, well, so gosh, there's so many good ones, but I'm gonna start at the bottom here a little bit and go. Are there any metadata tags or brief descriptions of a track that ever made you sit up and laugh and get your interest like never before, and then listen because of that? Any provocative tags? Something
I
come to
can't think
mind?
of any. No, in fact, I think most of us, we get not only pitched a lot of music, but we get pitched a lot of things through publicists as well.
Mhm.
And years ago, my bullshit detector sort of went through the roof after enough people sort of saying, this is the Sex Pistols meets Tiffany by way of, you know, da 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 da. And what, you know, it's like you're just sort of, your head's exploding because it's like they're trying so hard to catch your attention. It's like a kitchen sink thing, and it doesn't have any credibility after a while. You know, I usually sort of want it pretty straight ahead, you know, like if someone said, you know, late 80s old school hip hop, Boogie Down Productions vibe, you know, or something like that. I go, okay, I get it. It's just straight ahead. Getting to the hip hop thing, one thing I will say is that on a couple of shows, the samples thing is such an issue that I finally just had to sort of farm team look out for independent artists who managed to have the foresight to do stuff that was old school, that didn't have expletives, you know, for shows, TV shows, and also didn't have samples in it, you know, and there were a handful of people that I was able to go, well, these guys reliably give me good stuff that I can afford. And I sort of had to learn the hard way on one show when, in my effort to be my usual authentic self, Ghetto Boys was the one that made the most sense to me musically. And by the time I got through the showrunner and the execs and everything, we had like chopped the crap out of this thing until it was word salad, you know, just trying to clean it up. And it didn't feel right anymore, you know. So I just sort of at that point went, okay, screw it. Look for these people, you know, and because unless it's like you need a Kendrick Lamar track or something that's really relevant and needs to be known and is going to be a foreground application, it's less crucial to me, you know, if it's more of a tonal application. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things is I think in hip hop now there are fewer samples than ever. And I think most people in sync don't necessarily know this because I mean all of these top rappers will just go and they'll sign a hot up and coming producer kid and he'll just make beats and Fruity Loops all day long for $1,000 a pop. And there's almost never samples in songs anymore, but it's still such a huge discussion point barrier to entry for sync, which I just think is absolutely fascinating. But yeah, I mean, historically, if you're trying to get 90s hip hop or like De La Soul cleared, good luck. But I think
I do want to add to that. I think if you know, as we move towards having, you know, more diverse showrunners and, you know, topics that call for hip hop, that's going to change as well. Different types of music, I think is, you know, a space that I certainly am excited about. So, yeah.
Right?
Okay. I think we'll do one last question, maybe. Yeah. Unless you had a bunch, Wesley. You're good? Wesley, are you fine? You're fine. Okay. It has to do with these times that we're living in. They're saying how to approach during current times, not knowing if supervisors have been furloughed or if their TV shows are or are not in production currently. Should we be pitching regardless, or is there best practices to consider in finding out how, if is there some place to look? Is there something, should somebody gently email someone and say, "Are you furloughed?"
No, you know what? I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to relationships. It's not like we've just decided to retire and die. We've still got, we're going to have shows. And it's a good thing to just keep, once you sort of get a sense of what someone's range of flavors is, keep the relationship going because you're dealing with people who love music.
Yeah.
And that's really all that matters. It's all about the music. So, yeah, don't stop and don't change anything. The internet, the last time I checked, right now is still working.
Right.
We can still get stuff.
I mean, I was just talking to two booking people at different venues here in New York City today, and they're constantly still getting pitched, for shows for 2021. I mean, they're still taking in all the traffic, and it's busy. I mean, not as busy, but pretty busy still in terms of getting through all the material that they're sent and replying to every email and all that. So yeah, keep pitching.
I would just chime in very quickly and say that for someone like myself and other people that do what I do, it's our job to know what's in production, what's in post-production, what's working, what's coming back when. I have a lot of source materials that gives me that information. Plus, I'm in touch with lots of supervisors all the time. And during this whole COVID period since March, there were a lot of shows that I was working on that were in post-production that had been filmed and locked before the pandemic hit. And there was no, I mean, I was working on probably over 100 projects. And now it's really kicking in. Filming is coming back now. Shows are going back into production schedules. You're going to see a lot of shows starting up in November that are filming now. I mean, it's all happening, but that's for people like me who would be, in the eyes of all of our wonderful panel, a third-party person who licenses music. And that's our job, is to know what's going on and trying to ascertain when's the right time to talk to somebody and when it isn't.
One thing I will say is that for those of you, I would assume that everyone in the audience knows about IMDb Pro, the service, but I mean, just subscribing to that alone is a smart move. The one advice I would give is that you don't take the production information as gospel, because if it says post-production, it's probably already locked and gone. You sort of look at things that are pre-production, maybe even in production, but you sort of look ahead, and you take the time in there to cross-check their metadata to sort of find out which producers and which productions that you like, which directors, and you start realizing that this thing that looks unwieldy like a big world is pretty small. They're all sort of in bed with each other one way or the other, and you start figuring that out. But it's a good thing to get that service, and to get on top of it.
Absolutely. I use that pretty much, I don't know, a couple times a day. I also look at Deadline, Hollywood, and that's been giving insane amounts of information with what's going back into production, what's got canceled, so forth and so on.
I want to just ask one quick question, because this person's asked a couple of times, and it's for Danny, and it's super quick. But normally, if we were at a conference panel, people could come up to you afterwards and ask. So I'm going to be the message person here. Danny, for the recent project you spoke of, are you looking for pop songs sung in Tagalog or pop music created, produced, or performed by Filipino artists? I ask because I co-write with 2 or 3 really talented artists who happen to be Filipino.
Awesome, both actually.
Yeah.
Both in Tagalog and Filipino artists.
Excellent.
That would be fantastic.
The answer is yes. Find Danny
The answer
Exum.
is definitely yes. Help make my life easier. That's amazing.
Wonderful. Thanks,
Well,
Dan.
Yeah. Sure.
Do we
Thank you.
have any more? Sure. Do we have any more, Wesley? Anything? I feel a lot of people asked about third-party platforms. A lot of folks kept wanting to know, is Disco still one of the better pitch tools? What are the third-party platforms?
Yes.
We kind of went through a
well,
bunch.
I think if I can expound upon that, Anita, I think what they're talking about are licensing companies who pitch music
Pitch
to
out.
all of these people. And
Yeah.
a good place to look is the Film and Television Music Guide that Rich Ezra puts out. And it gives you all the supervisors who work in-house, all the independent supervisors. If you subscribe to that, you can get all that information. But it's, again, people like myself who have the relationships with all these people that we go to and send the music, and they're going to listen to it. They may not use it all the time, but at least we know it's going to get listened to. That's what I think we're talking about. Disco is not it's just a it's a pitching tool, and so and hosts your music, just like Dropbox or other kinds of things like that. So I'd like to just say thank you to all the supervisors, all the wonderful people that gave their time today to be
Thank you
here and
guys.
to talk about all of this wonderful stuff that we do.
Yeah,
Thanks a
Thanks
lot.
for
this was
having us.
fun.
Ooh.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good job, guys. Good job, panel.
Yeah, it was nice. It was fun. Thank
And great
you.
job. Thank you so much for moderating it. Your
Yeah,
191st
definitely.
panel or whatever.
Well, and Steve, thanks for manhandling us together here.
Thank you. Well, look, it's everybody's busy, they're working, and I really appreciate the time that you gave to this. It's really terrific, and to everybody who got to listen to it. So, thanks again.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Take
All right.
care. Stay safe.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Productive.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.